What's going on, creators? You just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Yeah, today I'd like to continue the conversation on mental diets and hopefully add something positive to your mental diet for today. I've been really working on radically just accepting the present moment just as it is. And really experiencing a lot of peace from that, and I wanted to share that with you guys, so you can put it into practice too. I've been kind of in the law of attraction vibe for a long time, the law of assumption with Neville Goddard. In that rabbit hole for a long time too, and there's not to say anything's wrong with that, like make it wrong so we can be right, but like looking at it more so as this is kind of a stumbling block I get into with it, where it starts becoming more of a mind thought imaginal, constantly just rejecting the present moment for an imaginal future. And even with like the law of assumption, where you're like embodying the state of the wish fulfilled, as like Neville Goddard would say, it's still on some level I feel like rejecting the present moment. If you're like kind of having these limiting beliefs and assumptions about the present moment. And so, to clear that up, it's really important to kind of start taking yourself out of the equation. And by self, I mean, your sense of old identity, where you had to struggle and strive for every little thing, that you're a brain and a body that's disconnected with everything. And that includes God and people and circumstances and life events and all this kind of stuff. It's not taking into account the mirror of reality, the bigger self, the connected self. And so by taking yourself out of the equation, what I mean is just trusting that God's the one that's doing the work to bring you through this process. And it brings a lot of peace in the present moment, because then you realize you don't got to struggle and strive. You don't got to figure out the solution, because so much of like, sitting in your mind trying to create an imaginal scene of like the desire fulfilled, what you're really trying to achieve is more than likely just peace in the present moment, or fulfillment in the present moment, satisfaction in the present moment. And all of these things are states of consciousness which you can embody now. And it becomes so much easier to do that as you look at the present moment as constantly unfolding more and more levels of love, and not more and more things to battle and resist and hope for an imaginary future where that doesn't exist. Not to say the illusions, aren't, something that you may or may not be dealing with, but, when they do emerge, instead of like you have to come up with a solution to deal with it, it becomes more of a surrendering that problem and realizing that God's already given you the solution to that. You don't got to worry about it. You don't got to come up with a plan. You don't have to worry about how this thing unfolds. You don't have to be the one that figures it out. Divine intelligence has already done that perfectly. Now it's like realize that even in this present moment where you're at with things, there might be some glaring things that come to your awareness that but even in those things, it's like, well, whatever's preventing you from fully embodying right now, a state of just peace, and what does peace mean? I mean, so many of these words, by the time you even say them, they're already kind of distorting these feelings and the state of beingness, I guess, is a easy way to, I guess, maybe label it. But even in labels, I mean, it's like you get to feel what peace feels like, and then trying to slap a label on it kind of distorts it for others anyway. But like by peace, I guess maybe the easiest way to communicate that is just not having this double-mindedness all the time, this constant resisting, constantly trying to make others wrong so that you're right. It's just like, oh well, and this that wanting to be right, is something spiritually you got to kind of watch, because it's like, well, I know the truth, and because I know the truth, that means that these people are wrong over here, and if they're wrong, then I'm then you can start to see how that trap can play out even amongst like spiritual kind of circumstances and events. Once you become aware of that, though, then that's the beginning part to untangle it, and then realize that you don't have to be the one that untangles it. It's more of like, trusting that God brought that to your awareness, and it's time to let it go. It's getting into more like meditative, type states. And even with that, there's like illusions that people have and distortions where it's like, oh, so you want me to sit Indian style on the floor and light candles and just hum, and that's supposed to be helpful? And it's like, well, it can be. A lot of times if you're just able to sit in silence, your consciousness naturally starts to rise. But even just making a lifestyle out of just kind of just focusing when maybe you're getting into your mind and drifting into a state of suffering, which so much of just like kind of experiencing my dad passing away recently. So many people, even today, I went to drop something off at the hospital for like the nursing staff, like a present, just because they took good care of my dad, despite what others may think. It's like they were there for him round the clock. When he needed something, they were there. And so, and that job in itself has to be a fucking pretty intense thing to deal with every single day. I know I kind of felt that energy of just walking back into the hospital after like a week or so after my dad passed away. There brings me a bunch of that energy of like that entire period of time being in there, and giving them that that gift, basically just something to say thank you for what they did. I almost start to forget sometimes how much other people deal with different dramas and everything. But walking in there, the guy at the front, my dad was pretty popular around here, and a lot of people were acquaintances with him, and he brought a lot of people a positive energy. And just the guy who's like talking to me, he told me his daughter died. It's just like, Jesus, and it's like I've been getting so much of that, where people just like tell me then their experiences of loss and everything, and it's like trying to I guess be supportive of them too, because not everybody is like aware of like the present moment, and being able to connect spiritually with like the one consciousness and feeling the essences of those people, and at the same time realizing that everything in form, and that includes like everything you're watching is part of form, but everything has a spiritual backing behind the form, and in like a symbolic interconnected relationship with that divine intelligence, that as you become more and more I guess able to steward your own consciousness where you're at, and a lot of times you can be triggered by that. It's like, well, I just want more and more and more. And not to say that's necessarily wrong, it's just somewhat distorted, because it's like, well, what you have now, you're already battling staying conscious. It's like if what you have to take care of is you're on the brink, of getting triggered by just different events, by situations, circumstances, and this scarcity thinking, all of these types of I would say mindsets of the old mind that is not actually who you are. It's like reminding yourself in those moments where you're starting to drift, and you can start to feel yourself drifting because it feels uncomfortable and it starts to feel like suffering. But the thing of it is, it's weird, because so many people that have expressed like some loss and stuff to me, they're their own type thing. I don't necessarily understand why that's going on, but like it is going on. Looking at that, and a lot of people have the same kind of thing where it's just like, well, at least the suffering's over. And it's like, okay, I can vibe with what you're saying on that, but then it's like, then why are you still choosing to suffer? It's if it's good not to suffer, and it's only ever now. So can we agree then that perhaps peace is better than suffering and torment in the present moment? If our loved ones are merged, their essence, with the one consciousness, like God just wears all these masks, and then all of a sudden takes it off, and it's like part of the same tree of life, I guess, over and over again with all these different forms. Because it's not just humans. It's, you have all these animals, and you have nature, you have plants, and to pretend like those things are disconnected from consciousness is missing what creation is. And as you start to realize everything is connected to this one consciousness, and there's this whole inner kind of world in spiritual sense to connect with. It's like, well, when do you do that? You're doing it right now. It's just like, how much can you connect with it now? And that's one of the things of like, getting out of this like imagine. Oh, I got to constantly just be imagining desires and then I'm just going to be in the state of waiting for it to manifest. When an easy way to become more and more present is to become aware of your breathing, and ask yourself, who was just doing the breathing? Were you doing the breathing, or was it God within you that was breathing for you? And starting to connect more and more with, God does the work. You don't have to do the work. You can get out of the way and allow and witness, God doing these different things. And the more that you're able to trust and do that, the more automatically the mirror of reality will start to show you that new reflection of God doing the work. You can drop a lot of these beliefs and these assumptions that you got to effort, and you got to you have to do these things to get God to love you. This conditional love that the old mind is only, that's what it knows, is this conditional love, where it's like this and that, and constantly judging and comparing, and you get to and it's like, once you kind of get out of that and realize that God is always unfolding this thing in the present moment, like the sun. It's always shining, whether you believe it is or not. What we have control on is whether we shut the curtain, and by shutting the curtain, we're just basically listening to our old mind that believed that we were separate from God, and God was somewhere out in space that's separate from everything. It'd be like shutting the curtain and being like, and then all of a sudden you can tell yourself stories and illusions of why God's punishing you because it's dark in your room, even though you shut the curtain because you listened to the wrong guide. That like, it's just like a matter of like catching that faster, realizing that, even in this this back and forth, this mental kind of whatever's, this inner conversation, this dialogue, even that is inspired by God on some level. It's like you can't have a thought, unless God on some level brings it to your awareness, and so much of our thoughts and even emotions, these are you can almost look at those as a type of a form, because it comes and goes, and you can observe it and become more and more in that kind of state of just observing, almost, being consciously aware of your heartbeat. It's like, are you the beat, or are you the break in the beat? Are you the pump, or are you the stillness? Going back and forth, this push-pull. It's just, the more you start to do that, the more it kind of opens your mind to different possibilities, different things to think about. But ultimately, acknowledging that you aren't in charge of what's going on. You're being led, that God is leading you to where you need to be. And the faster that you stop kicking and screaming and wanting to throw tantrums and resisting and battling against that, the faster that it's like you start to battle and resist and try to keep this drama going. And I don't know, even why we do that, but then it's like, when you let go, what you're battling and resisting is the problem, and then peace is like what's left once you're not doing that. And so it becomes easier to be like, well, by giving up this drama and this resistance, I gain everything. By continuing to do this, I only just prolong just needless suffering that does nothing beneficial. Besides, it makes you aware that you drifted back into your old kind of thinking. You're not embodying your identity, that is connected with God. And so much of like what it means to be connected with God, our old mind has no idea what that even means. It's like, what does that mean? It's like you're finding out as you're being taught these things by like the Holy Spirit, which is within you. It's the, a lot of times you get the old drama and the resistance that you can feel, a constricting, a tightness, a fear. Um, Even though there's really only kind of one energy, it's just a different. It's kind of hard to describe until you start to toy around with this kind of stewarding and all that. Once you start to, instead of I'm going to recreate the past over and over again, this dysfunction from the past that doesn't actually work, you just keep doubling down on it. Instead of doing that, choose love instead. And it's as simple as ask God, what does this mean? I don't understand what this means anymore. I don't even know what love is. So it's like, why don't you? I'd like to see what that is in form. I'd like to watch that. And then don't be surprised when you can start to connect with that more and more so as things start to unfold. So much of why we resist the present moment is we just think it's going to be worse, and like we think our mental activity is somehow going to control things. But it's in that mental activity where the chaos and the drama is actually going on, which then starts to be reflected and compounds these issues. But as we let go and surrender these different beliefs and these limiting things, and align our consciousness with love more and more so in the present moment, the more and more you start to see that reflection. So it's like what you actually desire starts to come to. It's counterintuitive in a lot of ways, where it's like what you actually desire. The block is this resistance and this battling and everything. But as you let go and just trust that everything that's brought to your awareness now is like a gift that's getting you to maybe a perfect day, better and better. So it's like one of the things I've learned from like playing an instrument. I think this kind of evolving consciousness, and not even say evolve, it's just remembering consciousness. Maybe it is almost like playing an instrument where it's like it's a game you just play. There's not really a win to it, because by the time you hit this next level, your perspective grows, and it's like more things become possible. Just like playing the guitar. It's like when you first start off, my progression was like punk music, which is a lot of just like power chords that are played fast. But then, then into like metal, where it's just like more licks and riffs and shit like that, into, blues, but then it's like as you learn one thing, then you get inspired and you see like another like mountaintop, and then like another and another. And it's like the same thing, I believe, with like, heaven. And I don't believe like heaven is so much of a place as more of a state of mind, of oneness, of connectivity, of being realizing that God is in control of literally everything, and only love is real, and everything else is like an illusion. And you start to realize that more and more so now as you break these different strongholds, I guess, in your mind, these limiting beliefs, it's ultimately your faith, what you believe in. It's like faith in evil, faith in separate forces, and faith in separateness, has a form attached to it. But there's only there is only one consciousness, and it's like the more that you realize that and believe it, and like seek the kingdom of God and God's righteousness, as like Jesus would say, it's like the more you start to see that reflecting out into your life. Is all of these different aspects of your life, or your relationships, your family, your marriage, your job, your whatever, all of these things that are associated with form and relationship. A lot of them have to, not have to, but like a lot of them are symbolic, and of our relationship with our Creator, ultimately, and whether and even the Bible talks about the way to please God is through your faith, and what displeases God is the eating from the tree of good and evil, which I believe starts to split your consciousness into all these like divided mind, where you can start to focus more and more so on just love, and just only choosing love in these different situations. And if it feels difficult at first because it's opposite, it's contrary to what we used to do, which is just, oh, there's a fear, let's react to it. oh, there's a fear, let's react to it, let's get in our mind about it, let's use our thoughts to try to figure it out, figure out a solution. When it's, just as it works just as well to be like, here's a situation, and instead of like looking at it as there's something, look at it more like, okay, God just brought this to my attention, God brought this to my awareness, God brought this to my life experience for some reason. Instead of just reacting out of fear, I'm going to just trust that, for whatever the reason is, even if it's an intense bridge of incidents over a course of a few days even, just going to stay present throughout, and try to see love in those situations, and see how God is going to, in every moment, add some maybe peace or some understanding that brings joy, or any of these types of like maybe whatever's, these fruits of the spirit. And and so I wanted to bring that to you guys' attention, so you put it into practice now, and get out of like these thought patterns, these thought forms that are just causing needless suffering, that are telling you illusions. And you can start using your own inner guidance system, when you're starting to feel suffering, when you're starting to feel like shit, that's a good sign that you're believing something that's not real or true. Because God feels good. It feels good to do God's will, and so start to use that as a guide, to get out of the weeds. And stop. This is what I'm doing. I'm stop constantly projecting this imaginary future, and look more so maybe to a loved one that has passed, and that's already one with God, and think about what would they be doing right now? Are they smiling? Are they experiencing states of joy? Are they happy? Their suffering's over. They're in, their new form. Their real form, I guess. Is maybe one way to look at that. That they're just feeling bliss and ecstatic. All these things, and things keep going. Easy. Smooth. God's in complete control of their consciousness, and all this type of stuff. And realize what you give to another, you're also giving to yourself. And it's like, well, why are you then, as a child of God, then enduring these different states of hell then? And just that quick realization, that quick recognition, you're able to kind of snap out of that pattern, that loop, and start to experience where you think of your loved ones in heaven and what they're experiencing. Start to bring those states of heaven to earth right now in your experience of life, in every breath that you're breathing. That's for you as well, because God's real and God's true. And it's like God is in the here and now, always in the eternal now. It's like, the more that you're aware of that, it's like, okay, well, if the only thing in the here and now is ultimately reflecting God's consciousness, then too, in creation, it's like you have the created, and then you have the creator, which is within, and as you connect with the creator, you start to see everything becoming more in connectivity and oneness, because it's all part of the one consciousness. In form, when there's it's one of those, you start to pick it up more and more so through just the doing, through the experience. You see it for yourself, and I encourage you to see it for yourself. And it's only ever now, so it's like you're already doing it. that's the mind fuck of it. You're already been doing it. You're either unconsciously doing it, and a lot of times when you're unconsciously doing it, you're just creating hell on earth for yourself and others, and just suffering and tormenting yourself, and thinking that that's something to be doing in the present moment. Or you start to catch those unconscious patterns and start to make conscious choices instead. Consciously choosing to maybe listen to the Holy Spirit and get understanding. That's probably the best thing to do, because that starts to bring you peace. It's like, because a lot of times our imaginings and everything we're desiring we're just desiring like a state of peace, but our old mind has no idea how to actually do that. And so it tries to recreate these scenarios, these addictions, and these, and addictions is, in patterns, just trying to recreate the same feeling over and over again. Trying to recreate that emotion. But even these emotions and thoughts and all these types of things, what your being, what your identity is, attracts these feelings and emotions and thoughts. And so it's like if you're thinking thoughts that are in error, it's a lot of times it's a sign that you're kind of embodying your old identity. Which, as soon as you recognize that, is when the change happens. It's only ever now. So it's like, how long can you stay in a state of presence and awareness, and these kind of states of the kingdom of God is at hand type thing. It's within you right now, as Jesus would say. How long can you connect with that before maybe an illusion comes and snaps you out of it, and then makes you, then all of a sudden your faith is in question, and now you're doubting, and and then all these kind of things. And so I just wanted to bring that to you guys' attention, just to sit back today, kind of just trust the unfolding of what's happening, even if all of a sudden now it's just like this seems like opposite. It's a time to trust God that something big level up is going to be happening. That kind of like that uncomfortableness. So much of like I feel like the fear of death, is like that fear of changing states, and that can manifest in lots of different ways. Going from scarcity to abundance. That feels like a death. Because you may have made scarcity part of that old identity, and all of this is tied with identity on some level. And like so much of like the ego, the old mind, the carnal mind, kind of wanting to kind of just survive at all costs, is holding on to a state of suffering and torment, because at least in that it's still existing on some level. Where it's like what you actually desire is a different identity that's actually who you really are. It's not an illusion. So it's like moving from like scarcity to abundance feels terrifying. It feels like death to the carnal mind, the old mind, even though that once you finally make that switch, it feels like amazing and so much better. And that's kind of this flow where we keep resisting and holding on to these states of suffering, and being uncomfortable with switching to a new state, even though the new state is basically a state of heaven. So it's like you're like resisting and fighting and battling against heaven and aren't aware of it. It's weird. It's super strange, but it's something to kind of become mindful of, so that we can release these dramas. And so with that being said, I think I'm about. So I appreciate you guys liking, sharing, subscribing, all the social networking things, sharing the videos with your friends and whatnot. Applying these different things is also very important. And I also appreciate your spiritual support and your financial support. I thank you for that. I appreciate it. And until the next God bless.